So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this month's episode of the new World of New Biz. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, my name is Katie Street. I am your host, but also the founder of Street Agency, a new business agency for agencies. And today I have another stellar female lineup with me. So I'm super excited to introduce you to everyone. And happy lockdown. How many of you guys have got sore heads this morning because you went to the pub yesterday? I haven't made it to the pub yet. Has anyone been to the pub yet? I haven't. I did. Did you? Oh my gosh, Diane. We will talk about that because it is very important and it does feel very nice. But I did manage to get my hair done yesterday. I also got my nails done. So yes, feel free to use the chat to chat amongst yourselves whilst we get going. And this month, I think any of you that get our emails will know that we're going to be really digging into agency marketing tactics. So what could agencies be doing to better market themselves to their audience and get noticed by the brands that really need them, which is what we talk about a lot at Street. And to do that, I have a fantastic lineup with me today. So first up, I don't know which way I am ever, because it's backwards, isn't it? But what I can see is opposite of what you guys can see. So she's either this way or this way, the lovely Sarah Shilling. So CMO of Unlimited, an agency, but also has got lots of previous experience in the world of brand marketing. So Sarah's really good because she has a view from both sides. So she'll be able to inform us on what she used to like and now what she's doing at Unlimited that is working well. I also have, I think you're here or here, the lovely Hayley-Jane. So Hayley is head of marketing for Great Britain for a fantastic brand, which I'm about to do a big order for, called Seedlip. And actually, I have new business experience of pitching to Seedlip at a previous agency. So we can talk about that. And in fact, that's one of my lessons in life because I had a bit of a blooper, which I will tell you all about in a minute. And then last but not least, the lovely Diane Young, and lots of you will know her as founder of The Drum. So Diane comes to us with, I guess, the all agency view, having spoken to and worked with hundreds, thousands of agencies over the years. So has a really good view on what's, the good, the bad and the ugly of agency marketing. So we have the most amount of sign-ups ever for the webinar today. Over 800 of you have signed up, which is just incredible. And I'm so excited and proud of what we've built over the last, what I've now realized is nearly a year. So next month will be our 1 year anniversary for the new World of New Biz. So yeah, thank you all. I know lots of you actually have come to every single event. So if you're one of those people, thank you very much for supporting us, and I'm glad that you find these sessions really useful. So without further ado, I am going to dig straight into the questions. If you have got a question for our fantastic panelists, please do submit them in the Q&A down at the bottom of your screen. If you've got something that you just want to say, then use the chat. But yeah, if you've got a question you would like me to put in the panel, please put it in the Q&A because otherwise it may get missed. If we don't get to all your questions, then we will make sure that we answer your questions and send you an independent email afterwards. So don't worry, questions will get answered if they get asked. So Hayley, it's always good to come. Hayley-Jane, sorry, I'm going to keep doing that. Or HJ. I'm going to remember. So, of course, as most of our guests today are agencies, they are always very, very keen to get the brand's point of view. What is it that really, I guess, attracts you to agencies, but from a marketing point of view, what is it that gets agencies on your radar and helps you notice them? Are there any specific tactics that you've seen that work quite well?
Where to begin?
I know. Let's start with a big question.
We'll start with a big one. Yeah, I guess firstly, appreciation from my side that it's really difficult and there are a huge number of agencies out there. Often you're approaching where you might not have a relationship already, or there's not a sort of network set up already with any rapport there. It's often a kind of cold conversation or a cold sort of meeting. In terms of things that really pique my interest when an agency gets in touch, it's bespoke, it's clear, it's really specific around what that particular agency can offer that's really going to add value to your brand. So take an email, for example. If someone's getting in touch and it's the first time I've ever heard of the agency or the name, and you've got such a full inbox and you're kind of rifling through so much day by day, when it's super clear straight away what it is that's being offered, and lots of time has been taken to think about what's specific and unique to you, your role and your brand, then I kind of sit up and listen, I suppose, because it makes your life easier to know how you can fit what this person is offering into your mix. In terms of sort of more broadly, so if thinking at the moment, for example, about a particular brief, very obvious one, but I'll get on Google and I'll be searching for, so from a Seedlip perspective, which agencies have knocked it out of the park working on challenger brands, or which have got a particular specialism building a new category, or sort of looking from that perspective. So I think, in terms of the specific specialism that an agency's gunning for and where they're really positioning themselves, that helps you to be able to navigate just the plethora that are out there. And having also worked at an agency myself, I know even when you're living and breathing something and it's so clear to you what you do as an agency and why you're different, when you're on the boots on the other foot and you're searching, it can be quite hard to untangle that.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually it leads on to we have had quite a few questions pre-sent actually. But one that I dig into a lot on my podcast, and I've probably spoken certainly to you, Diane, about this, is the agency kind of fear of talking about their niche or niching in something. And certainly when agencies have got a multidisciplinary, and there are so many out there. We work with some of the largest, for instance, digital agencies in the world at Street. However, when we're marketing them and when we're leading any kind of new business outreach, we're honing in on one specific thing. You can't, if you're sending out a marketing campaign and you're talking about everything you do because you're so worried that if you don't talk about everything that you do, you're going to get missed. They don't know how you're going to be able to help them or why to buy you. So I do think it's something that I bang on about a lot. It's understanding what are the core needs of your audience now. What's that value exchange that you provide as an agency, and trying to own that subject. And it doesn't have to be a service, doesn't have to be a sector. It could even be, that you're talking about, like you say, specific audience types, or, I love the idea of, talking about, we help challenger brands, or, we really understand, youth audiences, whatever it might be. Try to, I guess, and there's lots of different ways that you can niche, and you don't have to niche in one thing. You may have multiple niches and multiple services that you need to take to market, but lead with core messages and develop that into your content plan so that you're pushing out different things at different times, maybe throughout the year. It's not always that easy, but it's worth you really trying to understand how it is that you've truly helped people, because I think it makes your marketing plans a lot easier. On that, Sarah, that's obviously something that you deal with quite a bit at Unlimited. So
I was busy writing notes from when Hayley-Jane was talking, going, must remember to be clear, must remember to be all these things. So it's so hard. And I think, you're so right. When you're in an agency, you sort of want to tell it all, you do everything to everyone. So I think, something we did was, and it sounds really obvious as a starting point, but was to construct ourselves around the buyer. So be really disciplined about, if you do PR, obviously there's no point sending what you do out to everyone. That's only going to be relevant for PR and brand managers. The same with insight, the same with marketing and digital. So we, because it used to be a bit of a land grab for agencies, because obviously, that's the way it is in many ways, and you'll know that. So I think we just got really disciplined and thought, right, hang on, let's just first start. I would say that your best marketeers are your people, and they're your best ambassadors. So it was almost like, right, let's get everyone on board in terms of what's our common thread. We've got lots of different agencies in our agency group. What's the common thread? And we deciphered that as being, human understanding for us. And once we had that common thread, it was almost like an education process to everyone in the agency to truly understand that and get behind it, because they're having lots of conversations every day. And that's just another sort of marketing mechanism that we call it. So it was getting our internal sort of house in order. And then it was, like I said, the buyer lane way. So being really, really disciplined on being really targeted with our communications, who's going to what across these sectors. And that helped us construct, ourselves much better. And like I said, it sounds really obvious. You sound really silly saying construct around the buyer, but and then also look at the sectors that you're really good at. Look what you good at, and look where you'd like to be. And I think back to Hayley-Jane's point, challenger brands, are you really good at youth audience marketing? Are you really good at youth audience? Are you really good at scale ups, high growth companies? Are you big blue chip? Whatever you are, and that just helps you really define your marketing and your comms. So I think once you get all that sorted, you sort of it applies that focus, and then you sort of you feel a bit more confident as well about what you're talking about. And we always say that and tone of voice, the holy grail almost, is almost when you are marketing, if you take the brand off what off your social or your content, actually, can you see that that's your brand? And I think using a filter of, you should market your agency as you would a brand. So we always sort of say, how would Coke do it? How would Amazon do it? How would Innocent Drinks do it? How would Seedlip do this? And I think that's a really good discipline as well. You wouldn't just do one-off comms or one bit of marketing. It's the whole gambit, and it's the whole ecosystem that you need to think about. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I can ask Hayley-Jane a question myself. Is that allowed?
Love it, of course.
Yeah. Think about your sort of year. How much of your time, what percentage of your time are you in thinking about hiring an agency mode, would you say?
I would say I spend more time, without sounding really negative, but more time fielding approaches than I do proactively thinking about the challenges that we've got and who can help us to answer them.
Mm-hmm.
I should flip it all over on its head. And there is a sort of a few thoughts that Sarah, you were kind of getting where I was thinking in my head as you were talking around how similar the approach is when you're working on a brand as it is when you're working at an agency. And I guess I was just thinking how when you're, as Seedlip, as an example, when we make the first approach to a prospective consumer, we're not trying to show them our whole portfolio, get them to understand all of our wares, get them to understand the whole story right from the beginning through to what we're about to do now, and how they're every cocktail they could make with us, as an example. We're trying to hang our hat off one clear thing that makes it crystal clear, cuts through, they understand who we are, and then we can take them on the journey after. And I think that similar approach, perhaps thinking of it in that way, helps from an agency perspective as well, that you're trying to connect with a brand or a brand owner or whoever it is that you're communicating with on one specific thing. And then as soon as you have that relationship and you've delivered a piece of work or you've you've been able to have a kind of compelling actual conversation with them, you're then able to show the rest of your portfolio and to kind of explore over to, oh, but we do actually do this, and now you trust us with our core niche, we do this, and we do this, and sort of circling back, Diane, to what you just asked me, I think when I'm thinking about the challenges we've got and perhaps what external support might be required, because that's so hard to navigate when you're not familiar with every agency under the sun, I think it can create a bit of fatigue around it, that you think, oh God, there's so many, I don't really know who does what, so I'll stick to what I know. I'll stick to that one that I worked with on that other brand, or that one that someone I worked with before recommended. You kind of narrow your mind frame with it, which might be easier, but it doesn't necessarily get you better results.
Yeah, it's really hard though, isn't it, to find and trust the right agencies, because where do you go to find them? I mean, maybe this is a good question for you, Diane, because of course, the Drum has various different marketing tools. This is not a setup, by the way. This is we're not trying to sell the Drum, although we naturally are probably going to. But I know that there's lots that the Drum offers. But is that something, I guess, first of all, to ask you, Hayley-Jane, is do you, and sorry, Diane, but be honest, do you trust publications like the Drum? Where is it that where would you look if outside of previous relationships, referrals, where would you look for brands? Are there any specific titles or awards, or is it more, like you were saying earlier, is it more Google or people that maybe you've engaged with? Where do you go to find these agencies when you need them?
I think I definitely do use the Drum, love the Drum, get emails and explore kind of when it fits in the week. So publications like that definitely help. I think particularly in previous businesses, often the first port of call, and I think these are sort of invisible people sometimes externally that I underestimated definitely how important they were in the mix, but marketing, procurement. So having, where I was previously as an example, at ABF, there was an amazing woman, I don't know if she still works there, but she knew the new agencies that had just popped up. She knew the ones that had done a great job on a different brand that maybe you wouldn't be familiar with. So she would always be my first port of call of, here's our challenge, here's who we've worked with before. Is there anyone in the agency world that's standing out for you? Or is there anyone that on Ryvita, for example, the team that sat behind me, have they had a great experience with a particular agency? And that would be the first start often, because it was her full-time job to understand what services were required by the teams and the whole agency landscape. So she was quite important, and I guess understanding who those people are, because they're often not as visible externally, I think, when you're not working with an organization. So that was always quite crucial. But then you'd often be bringing ideas to the mix with you that, like you say, Katie, someone else had recommended or I'd read on the Drum or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think it just shows, for me, the thing with marketing, and I guess what we do for the agencies that we work with, because we develop their marketing campaigns for them, is actually the importance of showing up and doing something. Because if you don't do anything, you're not going to get found. And actually, Michael, I can see that you've popped in the chat, if you're approached cold by an agency, do you want that agency to have a point of view, or do you just want them to listen first? I think you have to listen, but you have to go with the point of view, because otherwise, why would Hayley-Jane read your email over anyone else's? Because I mean, like you say, Hayley, I'm not sure how many approaches you get, probably on LinkedIn and via email every day. I mean, roughly how many, just out of interest?
5 probably.
Yeah, I mean, some brands I've spoken to can be up to 25 or even more a day, but yeah, I know, it's crazy. So that Hayley's getting roughly 25 approaches a week, you've got to go with something helpful. And that's why things like webinars and content pieces that do show a point of view are so important. You do, but you need to understand, what is your value exchange? What is it that the brands that really need you for, and how is it that you're going to be able to help them? And then of course, when you start engaging with them, you do need to listen, but you can use platforms like LinkedIn, and there's loads of really great social listening platforms out there to do your research up front, so that informs your marketing strategy, so that you're going to market understanding what it is that your market needs are. Don't just make up a marketing strategy. You need to understand what's your value, what is it that the market needs, and there's 4 different areas that we tend to look at to help us to find that. One is the market, and look at reading things like The Drum and various other publications which are available, and McKinsey reports, etc. We then always try and speak to some of our clients' end customers and the brands that they work with, to understand how it is that they've helped them and what they truly value about that relationship. We then also look at competitors and other peers within the agency world. What is it that they're talking about in terms of subjects, marketing, etc. And then of course, the fourth and final one is your own brand as an agency. What are your aspirations? What is it that you really do? And once you've understood those 4 things, you should be able to understand the needs of your audience and what you offer, map those together, see where the most important ones align, and that's what you develop your marketing strategy from. I mean, that's a whistle-stop tour of developing a value proposition and a marketing strategy. But it's so important, because if you miss that bit, which so many agencies do, which is why I have a growing agency myself, if you miss that bit, your whole marketing strategy is going to fall flat on its face, because you're not going to be talking to the needs of your audience, and you're not going to have a point of view. So sorry, Diane, I deviated off there, but what is it that you work with a lot of, or not work with a lot of agencies, you engage with a lot of agencies. Are there any specific things, certainly over the past few months, that you've seen working really well in terms of agencies engaging their audience?
Yeah, well, I think, at The Drum, what we're trying to do is help people navigate the complexities of being in marketing at this point in time. And so one of the key things I think for agencies to do is to make sure that they are totally au fait with their buyer's point of view, what they might be struggling with. Obviously, when you're in your business, you think a lot about, how do I get business into my business? But actually, the better thing to do is to think about what are the problems that need solved for my potential clients. And I think getting into that conversation is something that works well. So if something happens in the news, think about how you can use that to help reinforce the point of view that you've got. And I think it's really important to have a point of view and a tone of voice as well in your content, but to think around how you can sort of analyse or comment on something that's happening more widely. Because when there's some big event or some happening, or some scandalous bit of marketing has been done or something, people are reading about that. So that's a really good way for you to get into the conversation. And it takes it away from thinking about yourself all the time and what my business is. And I think I'm going to mention 2 people that I think are absolutely brilliant at this, and have built fantastic personal brands, as well as building great businesses. One is Gary Vaynerchuk, he's a social media specialist for anyone who's been living under a rock and doesn't know who he is, Gary V. But he's also very controversial. So he's chosen a tone of voice where people want to ask Gary, because they know he's going to say something like that's going to, they're going to be hiding their face behind their hands as they're listening. And you'll never speak to him and you don't get something a bit shocking or a bit controversial. So that's his kind of tone of voice. And the other person that I really admire, who's just to me come out of nowhere in the last couple of years, is Stephen Bartlett, also the social media agency Social Chain. And he just does really thought-provoking content. Whenever he pops up on my LinkedIn, or whenever I see him being interviewed anywhere, I'm always really interested to see what he's got to say. So I think anyone who, and incidentally, the other really important thing about those 2 people is they're consistent and they're prolific as well. They probably have a section of their day every single day that's devoted to the marketing marketing of their agency and the building of their personal brand. And the people on the call and myself and then people on the panel might want to reflect on how much time we actually spend on that kind of activity and whether we would get a return on that, because it always seems to be something a bit more important or pressing to do. So I think I just think that kind of activity, which is consistent, it's interesting, it's attractive to people, and they've attracted a lot of followers. That gives so much more to you when those people contact, or their agencies contact a potential supplier. They'll be like, oh, Vaynerchuk Media's contacted me, what's that about? As opposed to somebody that they've never heard of before. And the other thing I wanted to mention actually was this idea of a kind of pyramid of influence, which is not my idea, but I saw it a few years ago, and I know there's various versions of it, but kind of at the bottom there's the general population who are all working away doing their stuff. And then the next layer up is people who are knowledgeable and specialists in some way. And they could probably do as good a job as anyone above them on the pyramid of influence, but they probably don't get the same opportunities, because the next people up are those that have built their profile as experts. And so they're seen as, they're known to be good at what they do because they've made a big effort to do that. Right at the top, rightly or wrongly, is the celebrities. So I don't know whether Vaynerchuk Media is better than any other social media company, but they're a celebrity agency. And that's got a value because they just get listened to. It's a bit like, Matt Damon being listened to on climate change, compared to someone who's studied it for 20 years in an academic setting. It doesn't really matter, because when Matt Damon speaks about it, he's got celebrity, and so they listen. And that's attractive to people. So I think those are the kind of principles that can really help agency marketing. And the massive advantage that all of the people on this call have got versus, I don't know, say a banking, someone, marketing a banking company or something, is we've got creative flair. We know how to create content. We know how to tell stories. We should be, the best in the world at doing this for ourselves as well as for our clients. So that would be my kind of take on the things that are working well.
I love that, Diane. Giving me loads of ideas. But to be fair, that's what we do with this webinar and other things. That's the whole point, is we're here, and it's not the whole point. I'm not just doing this to sell myself to all of you guys.
Never be afraid to sell.
Agency, but it's this whole solving, not selling piece. It's we're here to really help bring the community together. But hopefully, if you have any new business needs or wants, you guys know who I am now, and you may come to me for advice. I mean, we're pretty packed out at the moment, so I'm not sure how helpful I can be to everyone at the moment. However, it's all about building. For me, it's about building my brand and building the brand of the agency, and that is a consistent thing. It's not something that you can turn off. There is no quick fix to your marketing outreach. And to kind of map into what you're talking about there, Diane, there has been a question from Barney that was saying, a bit like a builder whose house is falling down, many agencies seem to pay little attention to the quality of their own social media. Would you as a brand be attracted to agencies that really engage you on social and share useful content? I think certainly mapping into what you're talking about, Diane, that is now more important than ever, because how else are you going to reach people? Yes, you've got, I must say we started, and hence all you guys have joined us today, with an email marketing strategy, which has then over the last year dialed up on our social. So now social is starting to deliver, not quite as much as our email tactics do, but it's certainly getting there. And actually, I don't think you can't fame yourself to the masses and reach your audience if you're not using your social channels well. And as a brand, if I was talking to an agency, and I have also worked client side, I used to work for some pretty big brands before I moved into the agency world 10 or so years ago, that actually if you don't focus on that, you could really let yourself down. And there's some really interesting things happening in the world of social media at the moment. I think LinkedIn, if you're going to use LinkedIn, use it as a platform for your content rather than inboxing people. Inboxing people on LinkedIn is a bit naff. But if you're pushing out really helpful, insightful content, people will find you and they'll start to trust you and they'll follow you, which is only going to help you when you get in the room. But also, dare I say it, the uprising in the last, and I think they're only just 13 months old or something, Clubhouse, which is an interesting one. Have all of our panelists been on Clubhouse? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, see, I wonder whether agencies, we've adopted it a little bit earlier, so I'm not sure how much of a platform it is yet for agencies talking to brands. But I mean, look, you have to sift through some, sorry, excuse my French, crap, to find the good groups. But if you're, please, if you're on Clubhouse, give me a follow, give Diane a follow, give Sarah a follow, because if you go into rooms that people that you know are hosting or involved with, you get to speak and hear from some amazing people. I have learned so much. I've been introduced to people. I've got a new podcast production company that I found on Clubhouse, so it does work for new business. I've had new business meetings off the back of Clubhouse. There are some really interesting groups and sessions, and it's it is a kind of voice platform, which is different to something like what we're doing today, but they are out there, and actually they can really heighten your fame quite quickly if you join the right rooms and you get involved in the right conversations. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to be taken in terms of helping drive your own voice and personality quite quickly. I don't know if anyone's got any tips for good groups. I know a lot of my team, guys, if you've got any good groups or sessions that people should join, can you post them in the chat for any other Clubhouses out there? But I think that helps a lot. So Barney, I'm going to answer one of your other questions as well, because you were one of the first up. Barney has also asked, how well as a brand, and this one's for you, Hayley-Jane, do you respond to case studies? And what he's saying here is some people seem happy with case studies which are about a tactic or a specific success, but others really want case studies that are strictly around their sector. How important are case studies to you?
I think they're incredibly helpful, because they can shortcut what we were talking about at the beginning around understanding tangibly what the agency is bringing. So it can be hard, especially when you've got lots of different specialisms within an agency, I think, to really distill down clearly, quickly, what it is that you do and the value that you can bring. So a case study can often visually or verbally really bring that to life. So I think they are really important. And it sort of linking back to the conversation you were just having, Katie and Diane, I think so much of this whole discussion is around establishing a common ground and a mutual respect. So I think some of the sort of traditional, I guess, thinking or dynamics between agencies and brands, I find quite difficult and frustrating, I suppose. So the sort of super traditional view that brands are up here kind of in their palace and agencies are kind of like crawling up to just get a look in and get the attention. I find that quite difficult. And when I first moved agency to brand, even the ways that, I don't mean in a derogatory way, this is sounding really negative now, but the way that the teams internally I guess referred to agencies was sometimes in that dynamic of kind of, we're up here in our ivory tower and we'll tell them what we want them to, and it was quite us and them. And I guess the conversations or discussions or ways of working that I found most productive and get the best results are when you've got mutual respect, that you both have a different skill set and experience base, but you need each other and you both bring something different to the relationship. And that works both ways. I think that the better the communication, the more information sharing between, the more you feel from a brand perspective, that you're being consulted. I really like that, when you feel like someone is bringing value to you, and they're not just listening, they're giving an opinion and making you think and picking up bits you might be missing, and really bringing value. But back the other way, a realization of what an agency can bring that you don't have on your own, or your in-house team can't support. That kind of, we all bring something to the table vibe, I suppose, that I think is important during the relationship, but in the way you approach each other. So it should be on an equal footing, I think. I've kind of veered off round in a circle.
No, that's really interesting. It's so interesting though. I think, you know, my tip on case studies would be also, don't just start by sending people a case study or pushing your case studies out. You need to do the bits that Diane was talking about first. I would say, Hayley-Jane, you might say different as a you know, a head of marketing at a brand, but you need to trust the people first, or had that insight piece, or had that fame built. Then you go, oh, and look, we did that.
Heard of them.
Yeah, exactly. And then we did that for what we spoke to you about last time. Look, here's a case study, you know, and that's a really great way of doing it. Is, you know, you always structure your content in a way. I always think there's kind of 3 important types of content that you need to have. One is the insightful, solving not selling, helpful content pieces that are going to solve a problem. 2 is show how you've done it. Look, and this is how we've solved that problem for a similar client, or maybe a totally different client. So show, you know, that show piece. And then the third one is, okay, so how can what's the kind of tactic or call to action in terms of how we can help you? So the third thing is, you know, maybe it's a workshop, or it's whatever it might be. It's something that the brand understands, oh, okay, I can buy that, or I can, you know, have a session with you to unpick my problems so that you can help me do what you did for them. So there's almost, when you're running a marketing campaign, if you think about having those 3 different types of content up front, that will really help you with your, you know, success rates, I would say.
I think you're right, Katie, that if it comes first, it cannot have the impact you want. I'm thinking of sort of recent approaches where it's been very case study heavy, with, say, lots of links of kind of, we did this for this brand and this for this brand. And it brings to life that tangible of what this is what we actually do. But I guess it's only relevant if you understand, paired with it, what it can mean for you, and what's specific to you, what can be delivered to help your challenges and your brand. Otherwise it can feel as though you're being asked just to listen because of the name drops.
I think it's key to it. It's the relevancy point, isn't it? It's so easy to be like, look at us, but it's like the why, like you say, Hayley-Jane, it's like the relevancy of this. Because I think also for a lot of agencies, sometimes you don't have the creds, but you're like, but we know we can help your brand, even though we're not necessarily have a challenge or a sector area. And I think that's where it's sort of saying, you know, we've always found it useful to be, you know, echo what you said, Katie, which is like, look, this is what's happening in the world and the economy. This is what it means for brands. This is what we would do, and this is why it's relevant. But like you say, sometimes it's all a bit too we have to step check ourselves. It's a bit shouty, isn't it? It's a bit sort of like, well, we're this, and it's a bit like, oh, it's abrasive. Like, you know, it's the value add that sometimes you agencies forget.
It's important never to make your desired client do any work. No, don't make them look at the case studies and figure out what the relevance is. Don't make them follow the links. You know, dish it all up on a plate. This is how we do things. We don't ask you to do work. We help you. You know, we come to you with solutions, and we make it easy for you to actually absorb them. So yeah, I get really annoyed when I get approaches that, especially I hate it when I see the start of an email and it says, if you're not the right person to ask, could you direct me to someone in your business? No, I bloody can't. Why should I?
I know. I hate that.
An immediate action.
Yeah.
if they find your content useful and helpful and your approach is good, I get this quite a bit when we do our email outreach, that someone will say, look, I don't look after new business in our agency, but I've sent it to our head of marketing or our head of new biz. And that's great, because the approach was right. You've got to think about how you're approaching brands. This is a good question, and I think everyone will be able to answer it, but Diane, you may be especially suited to this. For brands, particularly right now, how important is finding a cost-efficient and agile agency? Is that because there was a lot of talk, and I think amidst COVID, that has been an incredibly, agility, speed, and cost has been incredibly important. But it'd be great to hear, I guess, what your view on that is, having spoken to lots and lots of agencies. And of course, we're very interested, Hayley-Jane, to hear what your priorities are, which I think can kind of fall off of that as well.
Yeah, but I find it hard to imagine when you wouldn't want that.
Yeah,
would be my answer to that. What's the reverse of that? A slow, unresponsive, non-innovative supplier. You don't really ever want that. So I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, what might be a better question is, are there any specific things that you guys are seeing, brands really needing or wanting help with right now? And that might be service sector, that might be the kind of work that they're doing. It could be anything. Are there any kind of key trends that agencies should be aware of?
I think one of the things you could be thinking about is which sectors really, really need help at the moment. Where it's something you really care about. Maybe you care about the high street particularly, and you look around and you see where you think you could be the most help and how you could do that. So yeah, I think companies that are really needing help, also companies that are flying, and their needs might be going faster than they can keep up with. So I suppose that's two different ends of the spectrum that I might start to look at in terms of brands. I don't know where you feel, Hayley-Jane, your brand fits in that spectrum. I don't know what your distribution methods are, whether you're selling online or whatever. What's your view on your biggest needs at the moment?
I think it comes back to sort of two thoughts. I think it comes back to really understanding your audience. So in my case, Seedlip, understand how has the pandemic changed people's behaviours? How has it altered how people might be thinking about the world opening up again? What's going on in the world? And there's plenty online in my case with the impact on alcohol sales, the impact on non-alc, health and wellness, all that's there to be found and to read and understand. And I think very generally, the pandemic has, in my eyes, it's accelerated every trend that was already there. It's just heightened everything. So yeah, people moving out of the city into the country, they might have done that later down the line, but they're doing it sooner. All of these kind of things that are going on. So I think it's back to what you said, Diane, around to the original question. You need an agency to be cost effective, smart, agile all the time, but perhaps you just need it even more so now, just because we're doing more virtually, and budgets, unless you were I guess working in a well, it depends on the brand, but unless your budgets haven't been impacted at all by what's going on, or they've gone the other way and you've got so much money that you're kind of struggling with how to prioritize. It's accelerating things that are already there. I hope that answers.
In terms of pricing services, maybe there's a feeling that agencies need to reduce their prices at the moment because people don't have as much money. I don't think that's something that you can do in a blanket way, but it's really about value, isn't it? It's about the return on the investment. And so I think, somebody's followed up the question in the chat there, sort of flash up that, the need for agencies is to demonstrate that they can provide that return on marketing investment, and that kind of ties back to the case studies in a way as well, isn't it? I don't think that. The other thing I was going to mention in relation to that actually was how you're paid. So maybe now you're talking about accelerating trends. Maybe now we're going to see an acceleration in the trend of the way that agencies are paid by their clients. Perhaps maybe they've got a bit of skin in the game. They get paid at least in part on results. They might work a completely different model as well, but so many different agency brand models emerging. I think it's about 40 at the last count. Are they working within your agency? Are they working very remotely around the world for you, which might be more cost effective? I think there's so many different variables are available to us now that maybe we can start twiddling the dials in lots of different ways in order for agencies to bring cost effective solutions.
Yeah, it's been really interesting actually to see that. We've got agency clients of ours which have totally changed their charge out models and looked at totally new ways of charging clients, which I think is super interesting, and there does seem to be a big shift happening. And I think again, going back to what we were talking about case studies earlier, do not fall into the trap of this was the chat, we were asked to do this and this is how we did it. Really, what you need to do is you need to understand, have done that value proposition piece and understand the needs of your audience and position. Sorry, my puppy's just come in and he's now making this noise. I will show you all Bam Bam because he's not been online for a while, so I will get him up in a minute. But really what you need to do is position the problem and how you delivered return on investment or how you solved that problem right up front. Go impact first, then explain how you do it. Don't say, you've really got to drive that impact in front. How did we achieve X for such and such brand? Or not just we built a website for blah blah blah. You've really got to position, I think, that impact first, because I would assume, Hayley-Jane, that's what's going to get your attention. The impact and the fact that that agency delivered and helped solve a problem. That's got to be the first thing to lead with, right?
Yeah, and I think it comes back to I was having a similar conversation with a friend over the weekend about that kind of sphere of influence thing you were talking about, Diane, and I think it comes back to the mix around exposure and image and performance. And if you're doing brilliant work and you're marketing it really well, then that transparency and that relationship is starting to emerge, and it exists. If you're doing brilliant work but you're not telling anyone about it, then it's not irrelevant, but you're not getting anywhere near enough. You're not getting anywhere near enough attention or return in terms of the conversations you're having off the back of it. They're totally, when starting a new agency conversation or dynamic, that is at the forefront of my mind with all the conversations of how much are we going to have to put into this and what are we going to get out of it, and understanding that, or feeling confident, I suppose, that the agency you're speaking to understands that dynamic, can prove they understand it and can help you to understand it. And back to what you were just saying, Diane, around I've just lost my train of thought. Can't remember.
Distraction. He does this to people.
coming back round to what can really be I know what I was going to say, and making it as easy as possible for you. If there's too much to compute and too much that you need to go away and work out yourself, and to understand how something might fit in, or the return it might generate, or what exactly is this case study offering, the easier that whole merry-go-round means you're so much more likely to understand what it's going to do for you, what it's going to do for your brand, and how you can quickly put it into action, not something that's going to kind of drag on or not be tangible. So it's crucial.
I think that is, again, how you position things is, right up front, don't be scared about positioning your case studies going, look, this is what you're going to learn by investing some time in reading this. You're going to learn how we did it, if agility is important, how we did it quickly, how we saved the client, how we saved, let's say Coca-Cola money, to deliver this, project, the impact it had on their sales, whatever it might be that you're trying to get across, and make it really clear. We're going to tell you these 3, 4, however many things it is that how we're going to tell you how we delivered it, and what we did to make the project come in on time and on budget, or whatever it might be. Sorry, I'm worried about putting him down, because if I do, he's going to choose something, so I might have to get up again. But yeah, I think you've just really got to position it up front and, like you say, make it easy, because you guys are so busy, Hayley-Jane. You've got so much that you need to do. If you're going to invest the time in reading or understanding how an agency's going to help you, it's got to solve a problem that you've got within your business, and it's also got to be it's got to be clear how they're going to help you as well.
We often say if you can't say it in a tweet, don't say it at all. It's a general rule of thumb on everything. And then when they started to extend the characters, we're like, oh, is this really? But yeah, totally. It's like within a sentence, if you can't convey what the 20 pages after are or what you're doing, then there's no point. But yeah.
Agreed. Right, I'm going to try and get through some more of these questions, because we only have 9 minutes left, and I want everyone to stay online and do the poll again, because the poll has been really helpful for us in terms of learning what our audience wants help with and wants to learn about, but also there's some really good insights, and I think Michaela shared on the chat earlier the results from last month's poll. So yeah, please do stay online, and I'll run that 2 or 3 minutes to midday. So some quick fire questions. Anyone who wants to answer, just go for it. Does the geographical location of your partner agency still matter to you?
I would say no. No, I don't. But then I also don't know if it ever has for me. I suppose that, and this is just maybe the nature of where I've worked. But for me, it's about. I'm gonna get my mantra for life now, but it's about the right thing, not the easy thing. So having worked on brands where the offices were all over the shop, and they were often on top of factories in the middle of fields, but if the role was right, you make it work. And I think it's the same with the agencies that I'm open to. If it's a tiny agency, I don't know, a 2-hour train away, but they understand your business, they've got brilliant credentials, and they're going to do a good job for you, great. And again, this is just an evolving trend, I suppose, but the benefits of a bigger, say, London central agency are probably changing. So around, you've always got a meeting room to be able to use if you're doing something away from your office, or you've got a sort of a hub in the middle of things, that can be an extension of your working environment. That those kinds of benefits that can make, in that example, a big London central agency really attractive, I think will evolve and change just because of what we're all going through. So yeah, it's never been a no for me, but again, it's probably accelerated the trend. I don't think it's a constraint.
No. Oh my God, there's so many questions, guys, and I'm not going to get through them all. There's like 9 open still, but I'm trying to have a quick sly read through without whilst my dog is being really naughty. So another one for you, Sarah. Without the ability to meet people face to face, and as sending physical posted mailers might be a bit of a waste of time and money, because people aren't in the office as much as they used to be, do you have any tips in terms of creating big impact and engaging with cold leads leads in the digital environment? And I think this is actually one we could probably end on this one, and that everyone may have an opinion on, because there's lots that all of us are doing that can help with this. So what first to you, Hayley? Oh, sorry, Sarah, let's get you go first.
I was just going to say, just on I guess it's kind of linked. The previous question is that what COVID's done for us all in many ways, although horrific, it's been a real leveler. And it's like, it's agnostic now to wherever you are, whatever you do, you're someone behind a screen. And it's almost like we're all digital. So we're all in this world. So in many cases as well, I felt it gave us almost, you're always looking for a reason to reach out. And this was almost like, how are you doing? How are you? Like a genuine, what's happening? So in a way, it was like really great. You could just, within reason, sort of use it as a great jumping off point to say, how is your business coping with this? Like, how are you? Because a lot of our clients were like, we're not even doing campaigns. We're actually going to have to rewire our, the whole of the infrastructure in our team. Our marketing team's going to change because the business is changing. So I think that's an interesting dynamic. But I think for me, it's almost like your digital ecosystem. And what I mean by that is sort of like where, if you are in PR, if you have got great partnerships, obviously you've got Diane, the drum, it's like what's sort of your armory in terms of helping you in your digital presence? And I know there was a couple of questions on the whole push-pull strategy. And I think for me, it's more about presence and partnerships. So where you are, your tone of voice, and back to an earlier point, both Hayley-Jane and Diane made about consistency. So I think it's really important because everyone's gone digital and it's almost been like this intersperse of everything. Just be really concise, be really clear on your content strategy as well. Clubhouse is new, and at first I thought, oh God, not another social platform. It's actually quite good in some ways, but really be disciplined on your content strategy and different means. So that's kind of how we've gone about navigating the digital world.
I would say there shouldn't ever be a cold call. If you're doing your branding for yourself and your agency and you've got your content out there, then even when it's cold, it shouldn't feel cold. Would be my advice.
Hayley-Jane, anywhere that you live or that you like, where could agencies get noticed by you?
I think I'd always prefer a more direct email approach probably than a LinkedIn, because again, it makes it easier. If there's a conversation on LinkedIn, yes, I check it, but not as regularly as email, and then you're having to take that conversation to where it will live and breathe in your actual day-to-day. And also I'd say, to again, personal perspective, so I'm sure everybody feels differently, but trust the response. So I try to respond to everything. If I go back and say, yeah, just not one for us now, but then I have 3 follow-up emails of, but are you sure? And have you really understood what we do? And I think you really should have a conversation with us. It just has the reverse effect. And yeah, it leaves you with a sort of irritated, bad taste rather than the impact that's trying to have. And I think probably the most over familiar that didn't land well for me was a voice note on LinkedIn of someone I'd never heard from, never spoken to, and it was very much, "Hi Hayley-Jane, how are you? This is what the conversation I'd like to have with you." And it felt very, just a bit much, I suppose. So I think it's that balance of, as Diane said, it shouldn't feel cold, because the more kind of soft interactions you've had, or the more familiar you are to each other, then when a conversation you have it, it's much more organic rather than just kind of getting to you out of the blue. But remember that you're all humans at the end of the day, and so have a human interaction rather than a robotic or a pushy one, I suppose.
Keep it. I mean, that's one of the top tips that we have is, one, we get the best results through our email marketing, full stop, but we're always reaching out with useful, insightful content or an invite to, a webinar or whatever it might be. But you own a specific channel. So my advice to most agencies would be start with an email marketing strategy, own that, focus your time on it. But of course, you're going to need to create assets, your digital assets. So whether that's a webinar or an insights piece or a podcast, or focus in on one thing and reuse and reshare your content. This webinar, for instance, we will cut up into snippets and we will use it on our social channels. And of course, we've had people attend today, so also think about how you can. In fact, Katie Howell, who's with us today, and we have a podcast coming out, I think it's this week, about how you can shatter your content to get the most out of it. But really look at focusing in on one area and understand where your audience live. I would say most, like you say, most brands, Hayley-Jane, do, of course, are living on their email, because we all have to use email. And there are some great platforms out there, like Prospect.io and Lusher and hunter.io that can help you build those email lists. So you will have seen in the background, sorry, I'm 1 minute over, and I have a puppy chewing paper, that I have launched the poll. If you're still with us and you have a couple of minutes, or not even that, 60 seconds, please do fill it in, and I will end and share the poll results before we finish. There have been so many questions, so I promise we will collate all of the questions that haven't been answered on today's session, share them with our wonderful panelists, and we will come back to you all individually. In terms of other bits and pieces up and coming, we are hosting some Clubhouse rooms, so I will be in touch and I will share Clubhouse. It seems to have, Clubhouse is still such a big thing. Everyone's gone mad about Clubhouse. I've seen it going off in the chat. So yeah, I will share with everyone a link to our next Clubhouse session. And guys, if you will jump on a call after this, and if there are any Clubhouse sessions that you recommend, I'll also share those with you all. But otherwise, we will be online again with a special celebration and some exciting new news. There is going to be an exclusive in May, so I do hope that you can all join us again. But otherwise, have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share results. So yeah, otherwise have a fantastic Tuesday. I really hope you have a successful April as we unlock, and it helps with your new business outreach. And I look forward to seeing you all again next month. So yeah, have a lovely afternoon, everyone.